like this panel with two amazing guests and executives from two very impressive Irish startups who are on their journey to scale up. I'm Eileen O'Mara and I lead Stripe's business in EMEA. Stripe is a financial services infrastructure platform. So it is founded by two Irish brothers and we are dual HQ'd in Dublin and San Francisco. We spent all of our time obsessing about users and supporting companies, big and small, to transform their business and really to scale globally their e-commerce platforms in any country, anywhere around the world. And part of the challenges that we found in Stripe and other companies that we work with is what is the moment and what is the trigger when you move from a startup to a scale-up? And that's the discussion we're going to have today. So I'm going to pass over to Anthony first to introduce himself and his company, and then to Stephen, and then we will crack on and have some conversation.
Thanks, Eileen, and great to be here today, and great to see everyone. Thanks for showing up. We're looking forward to the conversation. My name is Anthony Kelly. I'm the co-founder and chief customer officer at Glowfox. At Glowfox, we provide solutions for fitness entrepreneurs to help them to run all aspects of their business. So if you think of a gym or a fitness studio, our platform helps them in all of the kind of day-to-day functions like booking classes, memberships, payments, of course, through to our partner Stripe. Basically a full suite of products that they need to run everything to do with their business. We were founded in 2015 here in Dublin. It was three co-founders. Started with a small Irish customer base. We're now serving over 4,000 gyms and studios globally. And our go-to-market is in the small gym space, but also in the large gym franchise space as well. So that's the story of Glowfox. So I would pass it over to Stephen.
Excellent. Thanks, Anthony, and thanks for having us here today. So my name is Stephen Crowley. I'm the CFO of Flip Dish. Flip Dish was founded in 2015 by, funnily enough, two brothers too, Conor and James McCarthy, Indigenous Irish company, and we provide digital solutions to the restaurant sector. So that's everything from the likes of web, apps, and now we've got our on-premise solutions, the likes of kiosks that you might have seen at McDonald's, and the likes of our QR ordering, order and pay, that we provide into the market. I suppose we service, I think, currently about 8,000 customers worldwide, and we've been growing hugely over the last number of years. Myself, I joined Flip Dish back in 2018. Again, very relatively small company at that stage. I think we'd less than 20 people in the company. So a massive shock to my system when I came into Flip Dish as coming from PwC into a scale-up and a hyper-growth type company. And over those number of years, I suppose the last 4 years, I've now CFO, and we completed multiple fundraising rounds, the last of which was the back end of last year, where we got the great accolade of having unicorn status. And we're continuing that growth journey and to be the dominant force in the market.
Well, congratulations on your unicorn status. Super impressive. So I thought we might start by talking about talent and hiring. A lot of conversations that I've been in with companies when they've come from startup to scale up is, when you start a company, everyone knows each other. It's usually the founders and a founding team. And, I'll hear with pride, we did everything from build the desk to write the code. But of course, as you move and the company gets larger, you need different disciplines. Maybe, Stephen, I'll go to you first. In the case of Flip Dish, how have you approached that? And what were the signals on the journey to, actually, maybe we need to go more specialist rather than generalist?
Sure. I think every company goes through this journey. I suppose I just reflect on my own experience back in 2018 when I started. I actually started as financial controller, and I suppose my remit was quite wide and varied, as one would imagine, everything from ops to the likes of partnerships, finance, and everything in between, HR, legal. And again, massive learning experience. I learned more in 12 months in that startup than I did in 20 years working in industry. And I suppose where we're at today is the fact that we still need to keep agile and keep fast moving and keep going at pace. So we still look for those individual contributors. However, we layer in those experienced managers in the different disciplines to help keep a good mix between the individual contributors and that experience. And it has helped us hugely over that period of time. Again, we doubled down, I suppose, when COVID happened, we doubled down on the remote first principle. And I suppose that allowed us to actually go and source talent right across the world, and actually the best talent for Flip Dish, and that has, I suppose, helped us level up as an organization from that point.
Have you found in that journey, though, that there were folks that you've hired that were just more suited to the startup phase? And as you started to scale, they're like, actually, no, I want to go and do this again, because that's something I hear about all the time. Is like, and are you okay with that?
Sure, that's a natural evolution of any company, right? And I think that happens, probably maybe happens at GlowFox too, in terms of folks coming in, and that's what they like to do in the startup. And but we try to coach people, and a lot of our people, early starters, early birds we call them, they've been there from their very start. They're now managing a mass amount of people and teams, and they've been able to develop their career through working with Flip Dish. I think an important part of our retention side, from the point of view of keeping really good people in the company, is the fact that we offer options and equity as part of that, so that keeps folks interested and aligned to the mission of the company.
Yeah, well, yeah, that makes sense. Everybody's a shareholder, effectively. Yeah. Anthony, we were talking earlier, you were saying, hey, some of your team you've never met.
Yeah.
As you think about going from startup to kind of scale up, you're going to hire around the world, which are what you're doing. Can you give us some insights on your approach to internationalization, how you think about that in terms of talent and hiring?
Yeah, so I think similarly to Flip Dish, in 2020 we make the decision to go fully remote as well, which alongside trying to scale internationally, it has different challenges and different things you have to think about. We started thinking international from a very early stage, because obviously there's only a limited number of gyms in Ireland or even the UK. So if you want to grow to a certain size, you really have to, especially as an Irish company, focus on international from early on. So we felt that if we wanted to have a presence in a market and really be there, it was important that we had kind of boots on the ground, especially from an operations point of view. So a lot of lessons learned there in terms of making them feel part of the organization, how you run all hands meetings, all that sort of stuff. And I think there were three really key things that we learned along the way. Was first of all, having strong leaders in those regions to sort of help the team, help them grow, working around their schedules in terms of being able to connect with them from HQ. So we actually run 2 all hands, on the same day, company wide, so we can hit all time zones. It's the same content, and some people can dip in and out depending on how their work day is, or what end of the day suits them. And third of all, it's that constant feedback, from the teams that you're hiring out there, to make sure that you're listening to them, they're being thought of, and you're helping all of the different parts of the org, wherever it is in the world, to feel part of HQ.
Stephen, do you want to add to it?
No, I think it's what Anthony said there resonates with a lot of companies that are scaling and growing, especially in this new world of remote first. A lot of companies are doing it, and it's important to keep that connectivity piece, and it is challenging, and we've gone through different stages of how we can do this better, and getting feedback from our colleagues in the business, I suppose, and one of those ways in terms of actually, outside of having the town halls every week and that connectivity piece, but is also bringing folks together, bringing teams together, not alone just for work purposes, but for social events. Like we had our first global event last month, and it was a huge success. We had 300 plus people into Dublin, our HQ. And it was all social. It was all about the connectivity piece and getting people talking together. And I've worked with folks for 4 years, never met them. I know what their bedroom looks like, but I don't know what, how tall they are, or what they have for a drink.
That's always the one, isn't it? Oh, I thought you were taller or smaller. You're both big advocates of remote, and obviously it clearly works. For other companies thinking about that, thinking of hybrid or back to office, what are the 1 or 2 things that you would advise them to really think about if they were going to make that decision?
Yeah, I can talk, I suppose, on some of the learnings that we had on that. And I think, when you go remote, first of all, you think, oh, this is going to solve a lot of problems we have, and things are going to be easier, and everyone's going to have a better work-life balance. So some of that, doesn't play out exactly the way you think you will. So you really have to think about a couple of things. And one thing we didn't do right at the outset was we went too broad in terms of where everybody was. So we had a remote organization, but we didn't have those sort of clusters anywhere where it was easy to bring people together if we wanted to. And then we didn't think about too much around the kind of the regulatory side, because every market you have people that are hired in, there's a different thing you need to think about. Even in the States, in the US, having people in different states, there's different tax code, there's different payroll, all that sort of stuff. So it's important that you kind of plan it well from the outset, so you don't kind of run into these problems as you go along. So a lot of learnings from that in terms of the best way to think about that structure. If you're going to be remote, think about where people are actually going to be situated is a big learning that we had, and we've been able to sort of rectify it now and turn that around. But it was a big learning curve for us to go on over the last 2 years.
I'm just wondering, maybe Stephen, for you, like how much did COVID determine kind of your hiring and talent strategy when obviously we all went remote very quickly? Has that played a large part into your strategy on talent?
I think it has, and I think the world has changed, rightly or wrongly, like from COVID, and just double clicking on what Anthony's point there in terms of actually hiring remote. There is lots of challenges with remote work, but I suppose the output from it is the fact that, again, I can only talk about my own personal circumstances. I was on an M50 for 2.5 bloody hours a day, and it was what a waste of time and inefficient, and even from a work-life balance, I'd never seen my kids, and from that point of view, having remote, being able to work effectively, and it's all about that effectiveness and using that time best. But getting back to your question in terms of that strategy piece, I think it has, and for us, it was very challenging, in terms of sourcing talented, really, super talented, like engineers, designers, product, finance, marketing folks, but able to have the world at your oyster now to some extent, within reason, and being able to source talent from that talent pool is a big plus for us,
Yeah, I think everywhere we think it's been a great leveler, and that it's given a lot of people access to roles in places that they wouldn't have been able to be considered for before. From that respect, to your point on, like, it's just opened up the talent pool across every country, across all the regions. Before we leave this theme, I did want to hit on leadership hiring. And as you think about when an org gets to a particular size, you're going to have to bring in some leaders, maybe that have experience and have done it before, and people that were really close to the founders particularly, and were like mates with them in some cases. All of a sudden they have a manager. That often doesn't go down too well. Maybe, Anthony, will you tell me how you've navigated that? I know you're like 3 co-founders in your company, and
Yep.
I know also you've hired VPs across the world. Like, how's that been for you?
Yeah, like I suppose talk about my own journey. So at the start, I was running sales, marketing, and sort of customer support and customer success at one point, and it got to a point where I had to kind of make a decision. And Connor, my co-founder, who's also my boss and my CEO, so there's a certain dynamic there where you have to sort of work around to make sure that you're keeping it professional in terms of what needs to happen in the business, but then you've got a long-standing friendship as well. So it can get difficult, but it's once you kind of have trust in each other and you respect the decision that's going to be made, and it's for the best thing for the business, I think most people can be professional about it. So that sort of process ended up me being more specialized in post-sale and taking on that department, and then bringing in a more experienced sales professional, which is what we needed at the time and is what the company needed at the time, that could help us scale a fast-growing SMB high-volume engine, which I had never done before. And then on the post-sale side, the ability to bring in people who've been on that journey before, who've kind of scaled the CS function. And I remember the first time I was hiring for that role and looking at the quality of the candidates and like getting told, like, to be honest, imposter syndrome, how am I going to manage this person? Like, I wish I had this career, I wish I had this knowledge. So, you have to kind of get through that, and then at that stage of a hire, it's really about learning from each other and working together collaboratively. The boss sort of, dynamic kind of changes a little bit, and you learn a lot from each other. So you always feel like you're both imparting kind of knowledge back and forth and through your different life paths, I suppose.
Interesting. Did you have to be more intentional in your communication around that? Because that's oftentimes like what we see, like people don't really understand why maybe you're bringing in layers or expertise. Did you find that?
Yeah, I think some of the challenge was with the team I was managing that I had really good relationships with. So guys who'd been with me all along, and then they were wondering why there was somebody coming in between us. So having to try and explain that it actually was going to be better for their careers in the long run, because you were bringing in somebody with the right level of expertise who could bring them in their career to the next level as well. And it's a hard conversation, and you miss the team you had, but it's part of an organization and how it evolves and grows.
Great, thanks, Stephen. You've also done the same within Flip Dish. I think in the last year you've brought in some VPs. Any learnings from that?
Yeah, very similar to Anthony, I suppose, in many ways. Like the fact that, and I can very much resonate with his conversation with his teams, because when I came in to Flip Dish, it was a very small company, and my remit was across commercial, ops roles, finance, legals, HR. I could go on, right? But over time, I suppose, as you're scaling and growing, you need to get those expertise and to level up. And actually, it's a natural progression of a company that you have to get that appropriate expertise in house, and those conversations need to be had. And I think looking back retrospectively at some of the decisions we've made and taking in VPs and taking on certain aspects of our business has been proven to be really worthwhile from purely an ROI point of view and what they're delivering, and it brings on those other team members, as Anthony had alluded to earlier too.
Yeah, great, really great insights. Maybe adjacent to talent and hiring, culture, and we often hear is like culture eats strategy every day of the week, but it's also something that needs to evolve when you scale up, from a company, from startup to scale up. From a Stripe perspective, this is something that we're continuously thinking about. We've really defined our operating principles, which really has defined the culture. But even with that, 3 years ago when I joined, you might hear is like, oh, that's not super stripey. I was like, well, what does that mean? Tell me, if you could, Anthony, I'll start with you, is like, how have you approached that, or what tools and mechanisms do you use to define the culture, also to evolve it and keep it alive within the organization?
Yeah, we always got told when new people joined that, it was great to work at Glowfox and it was a great culture, and people, referred to themselves as Glowfoxers, and this all sort of happened organically. So then when we tried to actually figure out what it was and put words around it, it was actually hard to describe because it was just something that kind of grew, as I said, organically over time. So, what we ended up trying to, like most businesses, is, trying to align on a set of values. And I think what then happens is you look at your values and they're like, oh, they're the same as everyone else's, really. But it's kind of how you explain the values, and I think how you live the values really contributes to that culture and how you keep it strong. And as a leadership team, we're so big on that we have to be seen to live the values. We have to be the ones, especially as founders, that are driving that culture conversation and the standards around what we expect of people when they're working in the organization, and more importantly, what they can expect from us as leaders to help them to evolve and help them succeed in their roles. So we really try and weave it into everything that we do.
And can you give us an example of some of the values that kind of steer you in the company?
Yeah, so our big one is one team, and that's sort of the value that we really lean on in terms of helping each other out, being there for each other when somebody new joins, that they feel welcome no matter which team it is, and people are really working together to achieve their goals, and really focus on that kind of cross organization, cross functional collaboration, which is really tough at times, especially as everyone's busy with their own work, to give time to other teams that need it. And that's a core part of how people are evaluated really at Glowfox, how they are to their peers and how they are to their to the other members of the organization.
That makes sense. Listen, there's a lot of competition in the marketplace for talent, and like you two, I spend a lot of time interviewing people, and the number one question that I'm asked, irrespective of what role, is like, what's the culture like? Can you describe the culture? And I suppose, Stephen, from your perspective, like a lot of multinationals in Ireland and all around the world, so you're kind of competing, like the bar is pretty high.
Yep.
How do you address that, and like what do you say about the culture in Flip and where it is and where it's going?
Yeah, and again, not to reiterate what Anthony was saying, but the fact that the culture, a lot of companies talk about culture, a lot of rhetoric bandied around, a lot of words and values, but like if you're not, if you don't set clear values and behaviors that you expect from both people in the business, but also people coming into the business, and it's as important as talent when you're sourcing folks. And what I would say is the fact that very similar to Anthony in Glowfox, but we focus very clearly on transparency, openness, honesty, and integrity as part of one of our core principles, and we live by that, and we need to live by that. And we, a clear example of this on our town hall or all hands each week, we share everything within reason with everybody, all the flip dishers in the company, and that's down to, even I was surprised at the very start when I joined the company, even down to the money in the bank, right? So that's all shared, and it gives people a greater sense of belonging to the company, and the fact that they're aware of what's happening in the company, what product releases are happening, what's going on in the marketing department, what finance are doing. So I think that's really, really important, and I think it's super important from the point of view of actually getting talent to that. When you're interviewing, that you test for that, and the folks coming into the company also espouse those values. I think it's really, really important.
I really like your point. It's like hard to capture it and document it
Yeah.
and the culture within the company. We did a pretty robust revamp on our, I'm going to say, operating principles, which very much kind of define the culture within Stripe. And just two things that you touched on there I thought were interesting. We ended up defining it in one thing. We've like 5 principles around what we do, and our number one is users first. And then we have 5 principles about who we are, kind of to your values, like curious, resilient, macro optimist, exothermic, and humble. And we felt that as we were growing so fast and hiring so many people bring their own culture into an organization, they've their own point of view. We just went out and said, listen, you can bring all of that goodness and we love it, but here, these are really important for us, and that kind of really has helped us as we've scaled from, you know, when I joined maybe 2,000 people, we'll clip maybe 8,000 this year. But it's all the same ingredients, isn't it? And like people want to be connected and feel like they belong in a company, and sometimes it's hard to define that.
Yeah, and it's rather challenging actually, and not to go back to remote working, but the fact that in a remote environment, it's I think it's doubly important that that sense of connectivity is there. Like, you know what, again, we're constantly trying to get better at it, right? So we provide budgets to teams to meet up from that social point of view. You know, our global event helps with that sense of connectivity and sense of the fact that, you know, we double down on that, the core principles and values as part of our culture at these events.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes between culture and a little bit on the talent side, but I think a learning that I had was, like, not everybody has to be on a path to be a manager or a leader, and, you know, it's perfectly okay for somebody to, you know, that's happy in their job and to just, you know, perform at that job on a consistent basis, and finding the place for those inside an organization, because in a lot of times they're the ones that are actually keeping the wheels going in all important roles across the organization that you can actually lose sight of because you get quite focused on, I need my new VP or I need my new leader. So that was just, from a cultural point of view, that's something I'm quite big on in my organization, to make sure that, like, you know, if they're happy doing what they're doing a good job, that's fine, and then we can work out a growth and development plan for them that's not necessarily turning them into a manager.
Before we move off this one, maybe last question on it. I'm just curious, is there any tools that you're both using within the company, like survey tools, insights anonymously, obviously, is always helpful to get those from employees. Anything, one, if you're using them, and two, was there anything that showed up in any of those, like, wow, we didn't know that, and that maybe forced a decision or an action?
Well, for us, I think we constantly look at going out to the org, because that's where you get the answers from your peers and your colleagues, and we do surveys with our fellow colleagues and just figuring out, and it's a full 360, and in terms of actually, you know, what we could do better as an org, how we can improve that connectivity piece, and, you know, and it revolves around everything on the comps and ben side of things. And I suppose one of the key learnings that we've addressed is around that connectivity piece, especially in a work in a remote environment, and ways to improve it. And we've actually actioned a lot of those things. Also on the leave side of things, and you know, I suppose from feedback around in that hyper growth mode, you know, that you're in, you work a lot of hours, and you know, it's super satisfying, but it's really, really challenging too. So, you know, as a result of the survey, we now have a couple of annual leave days in addition for summer Fridays, I think it's called, in July, which went down really well with our company and the folks. But yeah, I think you can keep on doing this, and it's an iterative process, I think, fair to say.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, very similar. We go out regularly to everybody, but we use a tool called Lattice, which is a sort of a platform for managing this thing, and everyone in GlowFox does a weekly kind of end of week update on what they've been working on, what went well, what didn't go well, and then they put in a sentiment score in terms of how they're feeling. So we've got sentiment scores across every team in the organization that managers can look at. So when I see the sad kind of face coming in, you need to pick up with them on Monday to try and figure out what's happened. But it's an easy way to start that conversation, because sometimes it can be hard to say, oh, last week didn't go well, and you don't want to be too negative, but you can commit to doing a sad face, and then you can have the conversation afterwards, which is nice. So I think for us then, similar to Flip Dish, so we actually are doing every second Friday is a kind of a mandated half day, so people can go and do, to have some personal time or do some stuff that they need to get done, like go to the bank or get your hair cut, whatever it is, to make it easier. And we've just actually gone to unlimited PTO as well, so we're only started that maybe 4 or 5 months ago, so no real insights on it yet. But
how's that going?
Yeah, so the reason why we did it was people were not actually taking their holidays. So when we looked across the board, the average was of 25 holidays was between 15 and 17 days a year. So, we kind of said, we need to bring it in some way. We couldn't figure out whether they were saving it to try and use it all together or what exactly was happening. So we tried to remove the equation of having a limit on it to see would people take more. So now you have to take 20, and if you don't by Q3, our people team will just start booking you in for holidays and make you take the 20 days. So.
You have to come back and tell us how that goes. It's super interesting. I think one of the things, a lot of admiration for our founders, Patrick and John. Every Friday, without fail, they do a fireside chat with the whole company, which is recorded, and it's on a time zone that everybody can either watch live, afternoon GMT, the US are on, or kind of the Apex folks will catch it. And they've just, done, really as we've scaled, used that as a form to keep the whole organization connected and just cut through all maybe the noise that sometimes you get as you're scaling up. And I just say it's super effective in terms of building the culture, keeping it alive, and you get to ask any question you want. So it's like no holds barred, which can be very interesting as you close off your week in Dublin. Thank you for that. We talk about some of the kind of the users, your customers. I know at the outset I said, listen, I was super excited to join Stripe, a company that served users that could come onto the platform and self-serve, never talk to any of us, and in-product sale, startups, which we love, and that was really, I suppose, the foundation of Stripe as a company, and then all the way up to enterprises. So Stripe has evolved in terms of product market fit, expansion, geo investment, and I know you both your companies really have been on a bit of a journey for that. So maybe, Anthony, I'll go to you first. You talked about at the start, small gyms, and now you're moving into kind of the enterprise space. Can you share some insights on that in terms of both the strategy and the execution on it?
Yeah, so when we started, it was sort of the start of what became known as boutique fitness, which was the studio, craze. So where people moved from going to kind of big box kind of gyms to train by themselves to a more group exercise type approach. So if you think of CrossFits, Pilates, the functional training studios, all that sort of stuff. So that was our sweet spot. We had a really solid mobile member experience with a booking engine, and through our partnership with Stripe, we were able to offer integrated payments for new businesses, which was unheard of in the fitness industry. So that was our core market. And then what happened as we grew alongside that, there were franchises that were growing at a similar size. So one of our customers, for example, F45, it's a huge international franchise. They have about 1,400 locations. So we started to think about, we could either have gone wider in terms of do we want to be a booking engine for salons, or do we want to be a booking engine for hairdressers, other appointment-based businesses. But we decided that we made the bet to double down on fitness, which is what we knew and what we were passionate about, but to try and move up market into the franchise and what we call enterprise in our sector. So we ended up getting a contract with a big franchise organization quite early on in our growth, which kind of dragged us to where we needed to be in terms of being able to support that. And one of the anecdotes that I love to tell was we had to build this feature where it allowed for members to book in multiple different locations at one time, and we had it down for 6 months, and one of the engineers went in over the weekend and found a way that he could actually deliver it in 3 weeks. So that was a huge win. So it allowed us to get ahead of where we needed to quite quickly. And I don't know if that would have happened in the size of the organization we are now, because we would have went off and tried to solve the problem rather than just actually sitting down and getting someone working on it straight away. So the way we think about it really is that our SMB and our franchise customers have the same requirements at the operator level. So when they're in running a studio, the same things are happening. But then you've got to layer on top of that is the tools and the support needed to run a much bigger organization like a franchisor would have, where they'd be collecting royalties, looking at network-wide performance. So we have the same product for all of our customers. There's just an extra layer on top that we have today to support larger customers. So there's a lot of efficiency because of that, and it sort of helped us to scale quite quickly.
It's interesting how sometimes that happens. You're kind of dragged by a user as opposed to maybe finding your path on it. You've been obviously on a kind of a not similar journey, but made some major kind of strategic decisions on your users and your focus areas. Can you share some of that?
Sure. So I suppose similar to GlowFox's scale, like we've over actually nearly close to 8,000 customers worldwide, and I suppose our core business is SMB. And just to put it in perspective, there's over 1 million total addressable market in Europe alone in terms of actually that space. So we're the market leader, but the opportunity is huge, absolutely astronomical. But what I suppose I suppose the fundraising rounds and what we've been around for the last 6-7 years has helped is in terms of we doubled the size of our tech team over the last 12 months in order to service, I suppose, new opportunities in the market, right? So outside of SMB, we're now working within that mid-enterprise and enterprise space. We're Power in the Dark, the largest dark kitchen provider in the world out of the US, and we've got the likes of logos like Galeries Lafayette and Cojean out of France and other landmark logos that help, I suppose, provide credibility to the brand. And I suppose what we've found with dealing with more enterprise type customers is the need to segregate, I suppose, and have separate teams working on whether it be the onboarding or activation side of it. Probably a more customization element will be required because they need that white glove type of treatment. So companies need to be careful in terms of seeing what their ICP is and doubling down on that, as opposed to trying to spread yourself way too thin and not being able to service the needs of those customers.
Yeah, really good advice. Only 5 minutes left. So you both your companies are partners of Stripes, and we're very proud and thankful for that. You bring us into marketplaces we would never sell or connect directly. Anthony, I'll go to you first. There's a new wave, obviously, where companies are embedding payments and monetizing the revenue in what we didn't see probably 5 or 10 years ago because you just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Can you give some insights on why you chose to do what you've done and how important is not only Stripe, but building an ecosystem around your solution in the market?
Yeah, so at the early days, we were just I suppose happy to be able to have a payment solution and offer it all together. But it became very transparent to us early on that this was going to be a great revenue driver for GlowFox and being able to monetize the payments that we're selling. So we now resell Stripe effectively on one of their platforms. It's called GlowFox Payments. So we do all of the onboarding, we set the rates, we have all of our margins, and it's a really key part of our go-to-market strategy. It counts for around 30% of all of our revenue. So it's a really important partnership for us. As we've evolved into enterprise, you have to get a little bit more sophisticated, obviously, because the numbers start to become a lot more important, and it also ends up being a huge part of the enterprise customers' business is payments as well. So having a strong partner that can support with that and help you to grow and scale without having to do the work of becoming a payment processor yourself really helped us.
Great. And Stephen, obviously kind of similar,
yeah,
I know, in terms of strategy.
Very similar to some extent. I suppose Stripe has enabled us to go international very early. So we went UK, France, Germany, and even into the US very early doors. And I suppose the ability to even test bed other markets to see how well our product fit was super helpful. And I think we moved over to Custom Connect at the back end of previous year. And I suppose that has allowed us better reporting, daily payouts for our customers, helps with cash flow. So that's been, again, really, really helpful for our partners and customers. And I suppose other products that we're using from the Stripe ecosystem is the likes of our terminals on our kiosks. You'll see them at the Marquee in Cork over the last few days. We're taking lots and lots of food and beverage orders down there. It's been an awesome success, and we're going to see more of that over the coming months. So it's been integral to the success of Flip Dish.
Yeah,
right.
sorry, one that we're very excited about, I just actually read our email on it this morning, is Strike Capital, which is gone out to our customer base, and that facilitates us to actually provide loans to our customers to help them to revamp their businesses or invest in whatever they need to from an equipment point of view. So that's another offering that we're just rolling out at the moment, and so far it's been really well received, especially coming out of the pandemic.
Did you ever think that you could offer, that GlowFox would be offering loans to gyms anywhere in the world in a tech-forward way on a dashboard?
No, I honestly didn't, but it's that embedded financial services offering that we're able to do now it's become such a core part of our strategy and how we think about the market, and our vision of being the ecosystem that the gyms just use for everything, and that's what we want to try and do. And it's about sort of capturing as much of that wallet as you can, and these products sort of enable us to do that.
That's great. Last question, I'll get to you first, Stephen. There's obviously a lot of uncertainty in the market at the moment. Are you hopeful for the next 6 months? What does H2 bring for you as a company? And like, if you were to name like one priority that you're focused on, what would it be?
So obviously there's lots of change happening in the world. Again, if you look at, I suppose, where we play in terms of digitalizing restaurants, the same pain points are now more than ever, actually. So again, very, very bullish about the next 6 to 12 months. And again, the priority for us is, as always, in terms of getting the right people into Flip Dish to help with our growth and actually continue on our journey to success. And that hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed, great.
Yeah, look, we were very worried during COVID. Like, were people going to go back to gyms? Was everybody just going to move to online? What was going to happen? How are we going to adapt to that? But thankfully, like, we've seen stronger numbers post-COVID. Of people returning. People like the friend-based exercise, the group exercise, that feeling of culture and community when they work out. So that's come back stronger than ever. And I think people are a little bit more health conscious as well. So I suppose I'm more bullish on the fitness industry than I was really going into COVID, just in terms of how it's bounced back and how important it continues to be.
What countries are next on your list? I know Brazil is done. Where are you off to next from global?
Yeah, so we're trying to figure out exactly where we are. I think it's probably going to be more coverage around the Middle East region, but that's just where we're thinking about.
Excellent. I want to thank you both for joining me on the panel, and for everybody who came in to listen to your stories. Thanks so much. Thanks all.
Thanks, Eileen.